T.Burd is back in the house. She is the owner of the T.Burd Law Group. Civil litigation, wills, trusts, probate, anything that has to do with people, right?
Anything that has to do with people, not usually insurance companies, no big businesses, small businesses, people fighting over money, stuff, homes.
A perfect segue. People fighting over stuff. Man, I'm so grateful to have you contributing to this conversation today because we got some stuff we got to sort through right now. So this is a little bit, I don't even know how to frame it a little bit because, it deals with grandma and grandpa. Okay, we'll just call it aging America, okay? There's some stuff that's going on right now that we got to talk about. And I'm not qualified to talk about it, so I got to get you to be able to weigh on this. Let's talk about the sugar daddy and potentially even the sugar baby. In aging America right now, with the boomers doing their boom thing, is it wrong to be a sugar daddy? And what kind of exposure could potentially be on the line for either side of that party? T.Burd, hot seat. Let's go.
Well, because I do wills and trusts and probate litigation, I'm kind of seeing a lot of the sugar daddy. But it's not really I don't know if there is a cool sugar daddy. It's not the, 50-year-olds with the 20-year-olds. We're talking like 70-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so it raises a lot of questions.
Lonely America.
Lonely America.
Right?
Lonely America. So an example is I see a lot of this in the elderly gay community. And I think it's because when they were, in their younger years, they weren't coming out.
Okay.
Our culture was different.
Okay.
So they didn't marry. They didn't have open relationships. They didn't have children. So they kind of get to the end of their life and they're lonely, and because they didn't have children and college educations and a spouse to support, they also have a lot of money, and they need to leave it to someone somewhere. But sometimes they have family that are just estranged, sisters, brothers, nieces, nephews that all want to grab at that money, and
think they're somehow entitled to it.
Yep. So when you get a caregiver, quote unquote, that could be...
we're going to use that term with the poetic licensing. Sure.
That could be someone who's a neighbor. It could be someone they hire. Or it could be someone who's just a good-looking, younger individual that they enjoy having around. And there's some legal terminology in there.
I appreciate that. That's why you're having the conversation, not me. But listen, here's... The thing that's interesting about this is that, there's a lot of... We were even talking about this off air with producer Adrian, that when you talk about the terminology game, there's an interesting distinction between a couple different parts of this conversation categorically, right? So I'm just going to come out and say, this is Truth Radio, so we're going to bring it up. So it gets a little messy when you start talking about sex, right?
Yes. So sex is, you can't sell it. That's called prostitution, and that's illegal. But you can sell time and attention. Sometimes that's what a caregiver is.
Right.
And there's a lot of case law about giving a neighbor, for example, your home if the neighbor promises to take care of you. And that's all they're doing. They're giving you time and attention. And that could be playing pinochle with you every day, playing chess, playing Scrabble, keeping your mind going. The law places value on that. But the minute it crosses the line and the minute sex is involved, now it's an unlawful contract, and that is not enforceable.
So how does that play out, though? I mean, because if this has happened in the comfort and the confines of the privacy of their own home, and the distinction or the delineation is sex is unlawful, but time, attention, and affection isn't, then what? So so I'll even give you a little more context. So now let's play in the sister, the entitled sister, the entitled brother, the whatever party of that estate that thought they had a hand in whatever got given to the... What'd you call them? Caregiver? Mm-hmm. Right. Then what?
Okay, well, this is Truth Radio, right? So the truth is we can start by looking at the medical records if the person's deceased. And a lot of time, erectile dysfunction is listed on there. So we know, or we can surmise that or at least argue that there probably isn't any sex going on. Of course, then if there's a Viagra prescription, then sometimes you have a counter argument there. But that's actually a place that we start to look.
Interesting.
If they're not dead.
Health records are able to be used in court like that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Especially if the person's not around. If they are around, that's a whole different story.
Right.
Then you got to go to the source. You got to sit down and have a conversation with them.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Good. So yeah, keep rolling.
Well, if they're around, you want to have a conversation and maybe videotape it. What do they look like? What does their house look like? Is their place
hold
a
on.
mess?
So the sister who wants part of the estate would be encouraged to roll in and do some videoing.
Sure. Well, anybody, right? You want to document it. How do we know what's really going on? Well, what does their house look like? If they have a caregiver, is their house a mess? Because if they have someone taking care of them, that house better be clean. Are they nourished? Are they well fed?
Interesting.
Do they have food in the refrigerator?
So the court can disallow, if they're no longer here, they can disallow the wishes of the departed?
They can.
Wow.
They can. And there's all sorts of burdens of proof here. So
Yeah.
if you're a caregiver, let's say you're a legitimate caregiver and there's the family is across the country and you're the one taking care of this elderly person, you should get that video. You should be the one to get that video. You should be the one to talk to an attorney and make sure you get a third party neutral to evaluate the person preparing their estate plan, person who's going to give you this money, to protect yourself. Make sure that you prove up that they're competent, that they're healthy, that they're, that there's no impropriety here. And, if there is impropriety and you're that estranged family member, you're going to want to come in and do the same thing to prove up your side. Sometimes there's just a battle between them, and this poor elderly person is stuck between what they want and what someone else is pushing for. And that's also really sad.
Well, and so it's interesting, obviously, in what it is that we both do, this can overlap a lot of times, because for most folks, their estate, the most valuable component of it is their homes and their real estate. And so it's interesting that, you can go your entire life, or the majority of it, with one like monothematic angle of how the estate gets handled. And then when you get older, you really begin to tap into your mortality. And that concept of attention and loneliness gets really powerful real quick. And you start to really look almost with clear eyes for the first time, well, what does this money even mean to me? What? So I can just give it to, because I don't even have any kids? Or I'm going to give it to my brother who never really gave 2 cents about me, especially now.
Right. And,
so it gets convoluted quickly, right?
It does. And the question
this person becomes really important.
Yeah, but are they gaining clarity, or are they losing clarity?
Ooh, point for that. Right.
And isn't it their money to do what they want with it? Is it wrong to give it to change your mind and give it to someone else at the end of your life?
Right.
Do you have some obligation morally maybe to give it to your family member, someone with the same last name, carry on family traditions? But what if they're not around? So I don't know. I don't know the answer, whether they gain clarity or lose clarity. And I think it's probably a person by person basis.
Well, and I think fraud plays a big role in this conversation, obviously, which is where you get the legal component affixed firmly in the conversation. But does it change also in the structure of the estate? If it goes to probate, would it be different than if it was literally constructed inside the throes of a trust?
Oh, absolutely. If it goes to probate, we're not really having this conversation because it's going to pass under the terms of the probate code. It's going to go to your heirs. You have no control of it.
So caregivers are out.
Oh, they're not even part of it. Now, they could come in and argue that they had a contract.
Okay.
That's possible.
Kind of like a will?
Technically, it is a contract to make a will. I promise you that if you perform services for me, I will pay you back after I die as part of my estate. Maybe I'm cash poor. Maybe I have a home, but I have no cash to give you. So I'll leave you my home if you take care of me. And again, because love and affection is okay, and time and attention, that's okay. I can leave you my home if you take care of me.
So if they drafted out that little contract and they both signed it, and maybe a notary was present, or maybe even not, or whatever, that would give the caregiver a foothold into that conversation.
Yes, that would. And that's actually a civil action. There's a lot of crossover there. There's timing differences. It's not something you can just wait on for 4 years like a typical contract. Basically, if you know someone has passed away and you think you have their estate is you're entitled to something from their estate, you have about a year to bring that action, and maybe even less depending on the circumstances.
So I think what I'm picking up from this is that correct me if I'm wrong, go ahead and feel comfortable throwing the water bottle at me, but when they make that shift could play a big role in its ability to be upheld, right? So it's if they do it earlier in life when they're showing all kinds of other emblems of competence and what did you call it? Clarity, right? Versus like right towards the end and all of a sudden this huge estate shift takes place and the caregiver gets like an ungodly amount of the person. You know what I mean? Like
yes,
that kind of thing.
Very
like,
suspicious. Very suspicious.
Suspicious,
so,
great
I mean,
word.
if you are the person preparing your will and estate plan, you want to start early. You
Right.
want to show a pattern of this is what I really, really want. If you change your mind at the end, people are going to question whether you've gained clarity or lost clarity.
But it's interesting because, you know, when they were earlier, maybe they had more support. Maybe they weren't as lonely. Maybe it wasn't that big of a deal. Maybe that person wasn't as influential in their lives and therefore not as valuable to be able to make those shifts. It's a very interesting conversation. But what comes up for me is what you said just a minute ago, and I think this is a good thing to sort of emblematically land on, which is that it all has to do with what the structure of the estate looks like, right? So if you have a trust...
Absolutely. If you have a trust, you can at least have a say in some of these decisions. If you don't say anything, if you don't put it in a trust, you have no say.
So is that true that really it's like the trust once again, I feel like this is a common theme almost on every single one of these shows, like the trust is kind of the thing. It's the answer, so to speak. Right?
It is the answer.
To make sure that your interests are going to be carried out after you're departed the way that you had intended them to.
Right. And it's not just any trust. You can't just go online and print up a form trust. You can, but without having this conversation that we're having right now, to ask what is it you want, why do you want it, to document the intent behind the decisions and not just check boxes, you're still going to have people arguing over it. Because if you just print something off the internet, you're going to get some, legal information in there, but you're not going to get you in there. And most, the layman won't think about these questions. No one sits down and asks themselves, why am I doing this?
The potential snag waiting for you down the path a little bit. That's interesting. So lesson, tip, takeaway?
Well, if you are the person who wants to plan your estate, you need to talk to an attorney and talk to them early, develop a relationship with them, tell them why you're doing what you're doing so that they can speak for you when you're gone. And if you are the person on the outside thinking that there's an unscrupulous caregiver or a sugar baby involved or someone out for money from your grandmother or great-grandmother, step in early. Don't wait for them to be gone because you won't be able to ask them questions. You won't be able to build your evidence. You won't be able to get that video.
Well, gang, that's why we got T.Burd in the house. And T.Burd, if this is somebody who maybe this conversation's pinging for them, what would be the best way to get in touch with somebody who could help them with that?
Call me, 858-215-2873.
Do you have maybe some internets they could drop in on and do a little voyeuring?
T.BurdLawGroup.com.
T.BurdLawGroup.com. Hey, we're out of the gates hot, Adrian. This is coming in. But, gang, we're not going to leave you hanging because coming up, womanizers. I can't even believe we're using that. What is womanizers? Okay, so you're in the crosshairs, gang. When a man promises you the world, watch out. T-Bird's going to let you know what you might be leaving left to be desired right after this.